A $200 watch that cost $18 to make. A bracelet that turned your wrist green. A bag that started peeling before the season was over. All in beautiful packaging with a name you recognized. 7 accessory brands are selling you a logo. 3 are actually worth your money. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which is which. Number 1. Daniel Wellington. Daniel Wellington did not build a watch company. It built a social media campaign that happened to sell watches. And the distinction between those two things is exactly where the consumer loses. The brand's entire fiscal architecture is built on a marketing-to-production cost ratio that is almost impossible to justify once you understand what is actually inside the case, because the movement powering every standard Daniel Wellington timepiece is the Miyota 1 L22, a mass-produced low-end quartz caliber that manufacturers purchase for approximately $10 in single units and significantly less when ordered in the bulk quantities that a brand of this scale would require. And when you add the cost of the case, the dial, and the basic assembly process, industry analysts estimate the total manufacturing cost of a standard Daniel Wellington watch sits comfortably under $20, which means the retail price, often exceeding $200, represents a markup of more than 10 times the production cost, a ratio that far exceeds industry norms, even for entry-level luxury. The exterior components compound the problem rather than offset it, because the leather straps provided with these watches are frequently described as bonded leather or genuine leather, which in material science terms means the lowest possible grade of leather scraps compressed together with polyurethane binders. And these straps typically begin cracking and absorbing moisture within a few months of regular wear, not years, months, which means the strap you are wearing is not aging gracefully the way full-grain leather does, it is simply degrading. What makes Daniel Wellington particularly difficult to defend is that the designs themselves are not proprietary. Technical teardowns and marketplace comparisons have repeatedly shown that the case templates are frequently identical to OEM designs available on wholesale platforms for a fraction of the retail cost, meaning you are not even paying for an original design. You are paying for the Instagram campaign that made the design feel desirable. The resale market delivers the final verdict with complete clarity. Daniel Wellington watches carry negligible resale value. They are not designed for repair or servicing, and the absence of any mechanical or automatic movement options means there is no horological substance beneath the aesthetic. And when the aesthetic is the only thing a watch has to offer, the moment it goes out of trend, it has nothing left. Number 2. Swarovski. Swarovski has spent decades building one of the most successful branding operations in the accessories industry, convincing generations of consumers that precision-cut lead glass is a luxury material worthy of luxury pricing. And the gap between that perception and the gemological reality is significant enough to change how you think about every piece in their catalog. The fundamental material in every Swarovski product is lead glass, standard glass with lead oxide or similar minerals added to increase the refractive index and produce the sparkle that the brand has made its signature. And while the proprietary cutting machinery Swarovski uses does produce a high level of optical consistency, the material itself remains non-precious by every standard definition, sitting at a Mohs hardness rating of 5.0 to 5.5, which makes it significantly softer and more prone to scratching than cubic zirconia at 8.5, natural quartz at 7.0, and dramatically softer than the sapphires and diamonds it is visually designed to evoke. The construction methods used to set these stones create a second layer of vulnerability that compounds the material problem, because many Swarovski jewelry pieces use foil backing and adhesives rather than mechanical prongs to secure the crystals in place. And over time, particularly when exposed to the moisture, hand sanitizers, and temperature fluctuations of daily wear, that adhesive degrades, the foil backing loses its reflective quality, and stones begin to fall out of pieces that were never cheap to begin with. The base metals used across the jewelry range are typically brass-plated with rhodium or gold, and these platings are susceptible to the tarnishing and green skin reactions that anyone who has worn fashion jewelry through a summer already knows well. And the combination of a fragile stone setting, a degrading adhesive bond, and a plated base metal means that a Swarovski piece bought at full retail is carrying multiple independent failure points from the moment you put it on. The secondary market confirms what the material science predicts. Swarovski jewelry typically retains less than 20% of its retail value, with only rare discontinued figurines or limited edition collectibles maintaining any meaningful resale interest. Which means the moment you walk out of the store, the financial reality of what you purchased becomes immediately apparent. Number 3. Michael Kors. Michael Kors has built a business model around one of the most effective psychological tricks in retail, the permanent discount. And once you understand how it works, every Michael Kors outlet visit looks completely different. The strategy is straightforward. Attach a high manufacturer's suggested retail price to a product. Place it in an outlet environment where it is perpetually marked down by 50% to 60%, and allow the consumer to feel the satisfaction of a deal that was never real, because the original price was never the intended selling price. It was a fiction designed to make the markdown feel like a win, and the actual transaction price was the real price all along. The material reality of the bags sold at the $89 to $130 price point that drives most of the outlet volume is that the leather used is a low-grade top-grain hide that has been buffed down and coated with a thick plasticky finish to simulate the cross-hatch pattern of genuine Saffiano leather, a process that produces a material that feels sticky or rubbery rather than having the waxy, refined texture of the premium Saffiano used by heritage houses. And leather experts who have deconstructed these bags estimate the material and labor cost at approximately $29, which means even at the discounted outlet price, the markup remains significant while the material quality does not. The hardware across the range is typically zinc alloy, with a gold-colored plating that begins scuffing and discoloring with regular use, and quality control issues including skipped stitches, visible glue residue, and needle marks that would fail inspection at higher-tier retail locations have been documented consistently enough to represent a pattern rather than an exception. The resale value sits at 30% to 35% of retail, which is the market's honest assessment of what the construction and materials are worth once the brand name is removed from the equation. And for a consumer who expects a leather bag to last multiple years and develop character with age, the coated surface of a Michael Kors outlet bag is not aging. It is hydrolysing, which means the polyurethane coating is chemically breaking down from the moment it encounters moisture and heat. And there is no conditioning treatment or repair that reverses that process. Number 4. Pandora. Pandora's story is one of the clearest examples in the accessories market of a brand that built genuine consumer loyalty on the back of real material quality and then systematically dismantled that quality while keeping the prices and, in some cases, raising them. The vintage Pandora model, pre-2018, was built on solid 14-karat gold and sterling silver with genuine gemstone accents, and the threaded charm system that defined the brand's identity used more metal per piece and created a more secure, tactile connection between charms and bracelet that collectors genuinely valued. And that value was reflected in the secondary market, where older Pandora pieces held meaningful resale interest. The modern Pandora catalog has moved decisively away from that foundation, with collections increasingly composed of gold-plated alloys and proprietary metal blends that lack significant precious metal content. And the plating on these pieces, marketed as rose gold or gold, is notorious for chipping and wearing off within 12 to 18 months of regular wear, exposing the base metal beneath and rendering the piece unwearable for anyone who reacts to non-precious metals, which is a significant portion of the population. The removal of the threaded system from many modern charms is not just an aesthetic change, It is a cost reduction that decreases the amount of metal used per piece, while the retail price remains static or increases. And a sterling silver charm weighing approximately 5 grams that retails for $80 represents a markup that is extreme relative to the raw silver value, which means the consumer is paying almost entirely for the brand name and the sentimental marketing rather than for any intrinsic material worth. The resale value of modern Pandora sits at 15% to 20% of retail, which is the secondary market's verdict on plated alloy jewelry with a declining quality trajectory, and for a brand that built its entire identity on the idea of meaningful, lasting jewelry. The gap between that promise and the current material reality is one that every potential buyer deserves to understand before they commit. Number 5. Steve Madden. Steve Madden occupies a specific and well-defined position in the accessories market. It is a trend replication machine that moves fast, photographs well, and falls apart before the trend it was chasing has finished its cycle. The primary material failure across Steve Madden's accessory range is the use of low-grade polyvinyl chloride and polyurethane in products that are marketed and priced as fashion accessories rather than disposable goods. And the fundamental problem with these materials is that, unlike genuine leather, which has a fibrous structure that allows it to flex, breathe, and develop character over time, PVC and polyurethane are plastic composites that rely on chemical plasticizers to maintain their flexibility. And those plasticizers either migrate to the surface or evaporate over time, causing the outer layer of the material to crack, stiffen, and eventually peel away in large sections in a process that is chemically inevitable regardless of how carefully the product is maintained. Consumer reports across multiple platforms describe this disintegration happening not after years of heavy use, but after months of normal wear, or even during storage, because the degradation process is driven by chemistry rather than friction, and a Steve Madden bag stored in a closet for 6 months can emerge in worse condition than one that was used daily, which is the opposite of how genuine leather behaves. The hardware across the range, zippers, clasps, buckles, is consistently flagged as a systemic failure point, with zipper failures and flimsy metal components representing recurring complaints rather than isolated incidents. And because the synthetic materials cannot be conditioned, repaired, or refurbished the way leather can, the moment a Steve Madden accessory begins to show wear, the only option is replacement, which is, of course, exactly what the business model requires. Number 6. Aldo. Aldo presents one of the most consistent gaps in the accessories market between what a product looks like in the store and what it becomes within weeks of purchase. And the gap is wide enough to represent a genuine consumer protection issue rather than simply a value judgment. The construction of Aldo footwear and bags relies heavily on adhesives rather than mechanical stitching as the primary bonding method, and in footwear specifically, the failure of the sole at the bend point, the area that experiences the most mechanical stress during normal walking, is a recurring issue that indicates the adhesives used are not graded for the repetitive flexion of daily wear, which means the product is not failing prematurely due to misuse. It is failing on schedule because the construction was never engineered to last beyond a single season. The materials used across Aldo's accessory line are described consistently as leather-feeling synthetics, materials that have the visual and tactile surface qualities of leather in a store environment, but lack the structural density, breathability, and repairability that make genuine leather a long-term investment. And because these synthetics cannot be conditioned or refurbished, the moment they begin to show wear, the product has reached the end of its functional life with no recovery path available. Men's dress shoes from Aldo that retail at prices suggesting professional quality have been described by consumers as becoming unwearable in less than 3 months of regular office use, which is a failure timeline that makes the price per wear calculation deeply unfavorable regardless of the initial retail price. And, for a consumer building a wardrobe intended to last, Aldo's construction standards represent a risk that the polished store presentation does not adequately communicate. Number 7. Shein. Shein is not simply a low-quality brand. It is a category of risk that extends beyond the product itself and into the health of the person wearing it. And that distinction makes it the most important entry on this list to understand clearly. Independent investigations conducted across multiple markets have repeatedly identified dangerous levels of lead and other toxic chemicals in Shein jewelry and accessories. And lead is used in cheap accessories either as a stabilizer in low-cost plastics or as a component in inexpensive metal alloys. And the exposure risk from wearing lead-contaminated jewelry against the skin, particularly for children and pregnant women, is not a theoretical concern. It is a documented public health issue that regulatory bodies in multiple countries have flagged in connection with this brand specifically. The material lifespan of Shein accessories is measured in weeks rather than months, with synthetic materials that begin degrading almost immediately upon contact with the moisture, friction, and UV exposure of normal daily wear, and the environmental cost of this production model is staggering. Shein is estimated to emit over 6 million tons of CO2 annually, driven by the production of synthetic garments and accessories that will persist in landfills for centuries, because the materials are not biodegradable and the products are not designed for repair, resale, or any form of second life. The business model also relies on the systematic theft of intellectual property from independent designers, with documented cases of small creators finding their original designs replicated and sold at a fraction of the price within days of posting them online. And the labor conditions in the supply chain operate outside the transparency standards that any responsible consumer brand should be held to. Which means the $5 price point on a Shein necklace is not a reflection of efficiency. It is a reflection of costs that have been externalized onto workers, the environment, and the health of the consumer wearing the product. Temu operates on a comparable model with comparable risks, and the same logic applies. The price is not low because the product is efficient, it is low because someone else is paying the difference. Number 8. Coach. Coach is one of the most interesting turnaround stories in American accessories, a brand that lost its way, recognized the problem, and rebuilt itself around the material quality that made it worth buying in the first place. The glove-tanned leather used in Coach's flagship products is not a marketing term. It is a specific tanning process that produces a hide soft and dense enough to develop a rich patina over years of use, rather than cracking or peeling. This is leather that gets better with use and can be maintained indefinitely. A Coach Rogue retails at $450, with roughly $130 in materials and labor. A markup remarkably low compared to European luxury brands charging $2,000 for comparable construction. The solid brass hardware, 3-year warranty, free lifetime leather conditioning, and the reloved refurbishment program are all signals of a brand that is confident its products are worth maintaining. Coach sources 90% of its leather from top-rated tanneries, and resale value holds at 40 to 45% because the secondary market has noticed. Number 9. Longchamp. The Le Pliage is one of the most underestimated engineering achievements in everyday accessories, consistently dismissed because it is made from nylon, which is exactly the kind of surface-level judgment that leads people toward worse products at higher prices. The high-density polyamide canvas is water-resistant, mold-resistant, and structurally unusual. When cut or punctured, the hole does not grow, because the weave density prevents the progressive failure that affects cheaper synthetics. The leather handles are reinforced for sustained heavy loads, and independent reviews consistently report minimal wear after 4 years of daily use. At $145 to $185, the Le Pliage holds 50 to 60% resale value, the highest of any non-leather bag in its category, because the secondary market has correctly identified it as a product built to last. Number 10. Mejuri. Mejuri has done something almost no fine jewelry brand at its price point has managed. made the economics of what you are buying completely transparent. The direct-to-consumer model removes the wholesale layer, the department store margin, and the licensing fees that inflate jewelry prices without adding material value. The result is 14-karat gold, sterling silver, and ethically sourced gemstones at accessible prices. Not plated alloys simulating fine jewelry, but actual fine jewelry materials with the supply chain savings passed to the consumer. 14-karat gold is chosen over 18-karat deliberately. The higher alloy content makes it more resistant to scratching and deformation in daily wear. 95% of their gold and 92% of their silver come from recycled sources. All suppliers are third-party audited, and the brand is committed to full material traceability by 2030. Resale value sits at 60 to 70%, the highest on this list, because solid 14-karat gold holds its value in a way plated fashion jewelry never will. 10 brands, same pattern. The price you pay has almost no relationship to the material you receive unless you know what to look for. 7 brands on this list are charging you for the campaign: the influencer, the leather that peels because it was never leather, and the crystal that scratches because it is glass. 3 brands are doing the opposite, building objects from materials that earn the price through durability and honest construction. The accessory you carry every day is a material decision. The brands that understand that are the ones worth your money. Subscribe for more breakdowns like this, and drop a comment with the brand that surprised you most.